Hello.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
I'm good. Okay. For some reason it's saying to reclaim host. I don't know if that's what I'm supposed to do or not.
What?
So hold on a second. Can you turn on captions by chance? There we go. Okay. So for some reason, I'm getting a message that's going across my screen. It says, host 500 is currently host, reclaiming host may disrupt. Okay, is that what I need to push?
I just want you to change it where it says host 500. I just want you to rename and put your name up there.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out, like what this was. Okay. All right, now I got you. Okay. Oops. And can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me good?
Okay, awesome. I just wanted to make sure that my mic was working okay. Okay. Alrighty, and then as far as my slideshow and everything, is that something that I need to have on my computer, or am I using the one on the platform? That was what I wanted to ask. I do have it on my computer, I just didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to use yours, that would be fine.
Say again.
If you want to use yours, that would be fine.
Okay, okay. Let me just get it pulled up here so that we're ready to roll. Okay. Got it. Okay. And then I guess once everything does, I'll just share my screen on my own. Is that right? Okay, okay. And then will you be able to, Michelle, just be able to keep in contact with me in regard to anything in the chat? Okay.
Hey, Shelly. Hey, Michelle. Just hopping in to see if you need anything. How's it going?
So far, I think we got it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Shelly, if you need any files uploaded, if you didn't get any files uploaded that you want to upload, or anything comes up during your session and you're like, oh man, I wish I would have put that, just email them to me and I'd be more than happy to upload them for you.
Okay. The only other thing that I would say is I'm going to assume that the participants are going to be muted when they come in. Is that right?
They should be muted when they come in, and Michelle
Okay.
can keep an eye on that and make sure, because Michelle, you have are you the main host, or is Shelly?
I should be. Oh, I'm not sure how that works.
Let me look here. Let me look at participants. So Michelle, you are the main host, so you can watch and just make sure, Shelly, you're the co-host. So that's perfect. That's the way it's set up that way. It's perfect. That way you, Michelle can watch. And if somebody's not muted and making a ruckus, Michelle can mute them.
Okay. The other thing is that this will be interactive. So I will have people either put it in the chat, or if they really have a burning question, hopefully it won't take up too much time during the presentation. But so like I said, hopefully we can just do it all in chat. Yeah. So let's just go with
you are in wonderful hands with Michelle.
Okay, awesome. I am going to step out just long enough to take a short bathroom break, and then I will be back. Okay.
No problem. You got 10 minutes. Take your time.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle, do you need anything from me?
It's going fine so far.
Okay, I really appreciate your help. It's nice to be able to say, here you go, here's your room. Take care of it. All right. Well, you don't have sound, or you're not. Say it again.
Hear me now?
Yeah, but when you turn away from your microphone, I don't know where it's at, then nobody can hear you.
Well, I just have to go through my laptop right now because we're having some equipment technicalities.
Okay,
This piece is not working.
gotcha. Just remember that as you are introducing, I guess.
Yes.
Alrighty, well, you have my cell number and you have my email, so you can get a hold of me, stalk me, whatever you need. If you need something.
Yeah.
Michelle, I'm gonna go ahead and put my presentation up now so that when people come in, they can see that. Okay.
And when we're getting close to time, like I'll tell you like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Awesome. That would be great.
Drop it in the chat, whichever you prefer.
Okay. Yeah. Let's go ahead and just do it now because it looks like it's by minute toe. Okay.
And then do you want to introduce yourself or would you like me to give a little introduction?
It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I can go ahead and do it, and then that way, you know, I can kind of make sure I'm keeping to my time. If that's all right. So is it recording at this point, or is it going to start recording?
It has started.
Oh,
Did you do you want to answer the questions at the end, or do you want to kind of answer them as we go?
So I was going to kind of put a request in there at the beginning, to everybody that comes in. But basically, if it's a question that's not going to take up a whole lot of time, sort of like it's not a long-winded question, I'll probably go ahead and allow them to go ahead and ask that. But if it pertains to like a case or something like that, then I'll probably tell them to just hold off until the end, since we're kind of crunched for time and there's a lot of information that I'd like to be able to cover. So
Sounds
yeah.
Actually, it's just now starting.
And the chest will either have this amount of gold or bubbles or whatever. Played that, but it was like a different version of it.
You got the wooden gems.
I
bottles.
like way above everyone.
Really?
I pretty much had 50 million.
Well,
Yeah, because
And
I figured
everyone
two
had like
because that's two models.
3 million.
Too many models is too many.
And it was like a village.
I want to go see
Wait,
Oh,
I know I was going
like one of them was like a
I said, you
Volkswagen
call
one.
us.
They changed
I
it.
said that cover
My mom
got
has
appointments
Volkswagen,
on
so it
Friday.
should be pretty easy.
I
And I
said,
got
if you can come see Justin, she can
like,
do
wait,
whatever or whatever.
I
I
swear.
said, if she can't do that on Friday,
You know who Alan Ellison is? He's a politician. And
Hello, everyone. It looks like we still have quite a few people coming in. If you can go ahead and mute yourselves, that would be beneficial. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, Michelle, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure. Do we have everybody muted so far?
double checking it right now.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Say again. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started here. Hello everyone, my name is Shelly Crawford. I am a maternal infant early home visitor with Kansas City, Kansas Parents and Teachers Program. I am going to be doing the Irish Hotline presentation today for you all. Just a little bit about me. I have been doing home visiting through Parents and Teachers for the last almost 10 years. Prior to that, I worked as a KBC behavioral health care caseworker. So I have a lot of expertise in working with families and children involved in child welfare. And I'm very excited to be able to bring this topic to the table for you all. I know that within the work that we do, sometimes we encounter those families that may be involved in this type of situation. So we're going to be kind of talking a little bit today about what that looks like and how we can engage and interact with those types of families. Okay. So these are our workshop objectives. One thing I will say, I do want this presentation to be interactive as much as it can be. I also will say that we have an hour, and since most of you, I'm sure, probably want to get out of here on time. I am not opposed to questions during the presentation. However, if you feel like it's going to be a long-winded answer, or you have a case that you're really struggling with that you would like additional insight, I will have my contact information put up at the end of the presentation. So feel free to reach out to me if you need additional insight into a case that you're dealing with. These are just our workshop objectives that we're going to be going over today. So we're really going to be focusing on how child welfare operates, kind of how you can help navigate a family through that situation that might be dealing with being involved with DCF or foster care or something like that. And then what is our role as a home visitor? What does that look like for us? Because these families do, I think we can all agree, pose a certain amount of challenges, but it can also be a very rewarding experience sometimes working with these families, helping them through some of the humps that they're going through. So we're going to be really looking at that and kind of talking about how you guys can engage in that type of situation. We're also going to discuss how to provide validation and support to a family that is under CPS's radar. So you may be the only person that really is able to provide that validation and that support for a family that is in that situation. So we're going to kind of talk about what that looks like and how we can go about doing that. The last two things that we're going to touch on is collaboration and how that can be really important in dealing with a situation where families are involved in child welfare, how that collaboration can really help us out as professionals. And then the last thing is going to be on documentation. And I do have some documentation that I'll be willing to share with you. So if anybody feels like, hey, I really want a template for how I might be able to send a letter to DCF or something like that, just let me know. Alrighty. So why do we need to know about this? Why are we talking about it today? I think, like I said earlier, we all can agree that this has become something that we have started seeing more involvement with. I think that DCF has also started to come around and started to see, hey, parents and teachers, early home visit, early head start, some of these programs that we have that are out there in the community can really assist these types of families that are in that type of situation. So just kind of, if you want to give me a thumbs up or anything like that, how many of you have had to hotline a family that you deal with, either past or present? Okay, so I'm not being able to see everybody, but it looks like you probably have had some experience with that. So if you have had to hotline a family, then that is something that we're going to be talking about today. It looks like we've got a lot of people in the chat. Yep. Yes, I have. Yep. Okay, so and then along those same lines, excuse me, you may also have had to work with a family whose children have either been taken away or maybe they're currently in a situation where they are already working with DCF. How many of you have families in that situation? Okay, so a lot of you do. So that's again kind of going along the same idea as to why this is so necessary for us to talk about. Another thing that has been coming around and coming down the pike is what we call Family First. So that is a new initiative that just came down the state of Kansas. So some of you may have heard about Futures or Family First. Family First is a program that has been developed in conjunction with DCF. It allows us to be able to get those referrals directly from DCF so that we can start working side by side with these types of families in an effort to keep their children in the home, to provide that parenting education, that home visiting support that we all know can be so beneficial. Alrighty. So just kind of going through the chat, if you want to put it in the chat or if you want to speak up, I can have Michelle unmute you. But what do you think of when you think of families involved with child welfare? Just kind of throw out some terms or some words that kind of come to mind for you. High stress, absolutely. Trauma. They need support. Yeah, they have some challenges, dysfunction, they're hurting. Absolutely. Child abuse, substance abuse, mental health. Absolutely. So these are all things that we often think of when we are, generational dysfunction. I like that one. So I think we can all attest to the fact that there's probably some families that have, actually gone through generations of this type of trauma and this type of situation, in need of resources. Absolutely. So these are all things that we think of as the family going through. What are we going through? What are some feelings that come up for you when you're dealing with somebody that's involved in this situation? Or maybe you get a referral, when you see that that is something that they're dealing with. What are some thoughts or feelings that come up for you? Helplessness, okay. Want to help. Don't feel educated enough, frustration, no support, confusion. Not wanting to report for fear of losing trust. Okay, we're absolutely going to be talking about that for sure. Insecurity, uneducated, and don't trust the system. Okay, so Qatar, I just saw that you said that you don't trust the system. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that real fast. Oh, the system seems broken. Okay, absolutely. Okay. We have deportation, system injustice. Okay, so more kind of going the route of like that racial equity and stuff like that. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Okay. Yeah, okay, absolutely. So there is, I'm not going to speak a whole lot to that today, but the sometimes see a more disproportionate amount of Black and brown children that are involved in that type of situation than we do Caucasian children. Okay, so something to keep in mind with this is that we all have varying degrees of thoughts. Hopefully I didn't. Okay, we all have varying degrees of thoughts and feelings when it comes to working with these types of families. And the most important thing to realize is that even though you may get a referral, it says that this family is involved in child welfare, that doesn't mean anything, right? They're still people. There's still families that we have to deal with. And we really don't know what we're going to be encountering until we walk through that door. So it's really important that we not make those snap judgments and that we really consider how we feel about it, that we talk it over with someone, that we kind of reflect upon, why am I feeling this way, right? Where is this coming from for me? Because if I can reflect on that and look at it, then I can be better for this family. Okay. The last thing I really want you guys to think about too is that it may be a situation where we're not just working with those families that have had a child taken away. Okay, so we may be working with foster families. We may be working with a relative who may be high placement of that child. So these are all different families that are still involved somehow with DCF, but not in the traditional standpoint of, oh, it's a family that's had a child taken away. Okay. Okay, so we're going to do an activity. This is fact versus myth. You can definitely put it in the chat. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and read a statement, and you guys let me know if you think it's fact or fiction. Okay, true or false? Anytime a family is hotline, the kids will likely be removed. How do we feel about this? False, fiction. Absolutely. So that is false. It's important to know that reports can be screened in or screened out. And we'll talk about that here in a minute when we get to the hotlining portion. True or false? You're expected to provide child welfare with any documentation they request. False. False, absolutely. So I'm surprised that some of you did not think of that as being a trick question, because for some people, they seem to think that they have to, right? They seem to think, oh, well, DCF is knocking on my door, they're calling me 10 times a day, I have to provide this. Here's the thing though, it's okay to provide some documentation to DCF. Okay, but we've got to be careful about what is that documentation that they're asking for. And if you don't know, it's okay to ask. Okay, what is this for? What do you need it for? What is the purpose of this documentation? Okay, and if the reason doesn't match up with what they're telling you, I would not give it to them. The only time that you are required to give documentation of the family is if you are court-ordered to do so. Okay, and I want to make that very clear because that is something that sometimes people do get hung up about. True or false? You may be called to testify in court if a family you work with is involved in child welfare. True, absolutely. So this is something that obviously most of us know it can happen when you're working with a family involved in child welfare. Anybody who is associated with that family has the potential to be called to testify in court if they have knowledge of what's been going on in that home. True or false? If I feel that a hotline report will likely be screened out or not investigated, I don't have to report. False. That's right. So that kind of goes back to, talking about screening in, screening out. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Here's the most important thing that I really want you guys to remember. You are not investigators, okay? You are not DCF. You're not to go in there and go, oh, well, how did that happen? And I mean, it's okay to ask that question, okay, to ask how it happened, but we don't go into the more leading questions of, really, they fell down the stairs, are you sure? Right? Because it looks to me like there's some work going on here and that doesn't match up with what you're telling me. So we are not investigators. One of the things that we have to keep in mind is that all we have to have is a suspicion that something is going on, okay? And a lot of times that can be confusing. We don't always know for sure, okay, is something going on? I think there is, I can't quite put my finger on what might be happening here. In which case it's so important that you go to a colleague or supervisor and talk to them about what might be going on. Get some insight from a fresh pair of eyes as to what might be happening there. Okay, and then just kind of talking about mandated reporting here. So I'm not going to go in depth into this. KCSL has a wonderful mandated reporting training. So if anybody needs that, I really suggest that you contact them about that. But just remember that we are all, because we're in these homes, because we are working with these children and families, we are mandated reporters. So by law, if we feel that something is going on, if we have a suspicion of abuse or neglect, we are obligated to report that by law. Now, if you make that report in good faith and nothing comes of it, and good faith basically means you have a concern. right? You have a concern about the well-being of that child in that house. You're not sure what's going on, but you need somebody to go out there and kind of check and see what's going on. So if you made that in good faith and nothing comes of it, you're protected. So if somebody were to make a malicious report, maybe they're trying to get back at a parent or something like that, then that would not be in good faith. Okay, so let's talk about hotlining for a minute. Some of you have had to do that. So in Kansas, the hotline number is normally associated with the DCF website. You can go on dcf.kansas.org or gov, I'm sorry, and you can normally find the number on that website. I do highly recommend, because anybody who has ever tried to call the hotline number realizes that you may be on the phone for an ungodly amount of time. So I do recommend making an online report if at all possible. That being said, make sure that you have the documentation on that family and that child readily available, because you're going to need it. So I do have kind of a checklist of things that you might want to consider having at your disposal, and that is all on the platform. I put that on there for you. And if you have another state, so for matter of example, let's say you are working with somebody, for those of you on the western side, maybe you're dealing with somebody who, they're going back and forth from Colorado to here, or, in my particular situation, a lot of people jump the state over into Missouri. Missouri has their own hotline number, and so does Colorado. So if for matter of example, you happen to find out that, there's something going on within a home in Colorado or Missouri, they have their own hotline number. And definitely, again, make sure that you talk it over with a colleague or somebody like that if you feel like, okay, I'm not sure what's going on here, right? And how many of us do that, right? We sit there and we know that we're going into this house, we see some of the things that we see, and we second guess ourselves. Well, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'm overreacting, right? And it's okay to think that. I've thought that myself, okay? And all the more reason for us to really talk with a supervisor or a coworker about what's going on. Okay, so what happens after that hotline report is made? So a lot of times people want to know, okay, what's the ins and outs of what happens after that happens? Because we don't know. And a lot of times DCF will not tell you. They may send you a letter afterwards to let you know if it's been assigned for investigation or not. So that's kind of letting you know, okay, it was screened in or it was screened out. So screened out basically occurs when maybe we don't have sufficient information, or maybe the information that we have about the situation does not rise to the level of, okay, we need to take time out of our day to send somebody out there to find out more about what's going on. So for matter of example, maybe you go to a store and you see a mom slap a child in the middle of the store. Do I think it needs to be hotline? Yes. Are you going to have enough information for an investigator to go off of? Probably not, because you probably don't have names, you don't have an address, you don't have anything like that. So again, chances are that report will more than likely be cleaned out. Now, a lot of times when it's screened in, what they are looking at, and a lot of states have different criteria on what they look at. But the most foremost thing that they look at is severity and frequency. So if you were to tell them, yeah, the kid, looks like they're being, hit or beaten several times a day, that is a lot different than, okay, mom popped them on the butt once, and then she felt really bad about it. Now, I'm not saying that you should not report, but that's just kind of what they look at. Sexual abuse reports are almost always investigated because it does rise to that level of severity. So just to let you know about that. Once a report is cleaned in, then an investigator is often assigned, and that may involve talking to the family. They may talk with the kids if there are older kids in the home, maybe not necessarily all kids, because all kids are not always going to be age appropriate in asking questions, but definitely older children, siblings in the home, anybody who's involved with that case, so teachers, you, anybody that may have been in that home that might know what's going on. And it may also involve a physical examination of the children for possible evidence of abuse, as well as a visit to the home. Okay, so what happens after investigation? So there are several things that may take place. I'm going to go ahead and put them up here for you. So the first thing is that, and I forgot to put a fifth one up there. So one thing that may happen after investigation is an investigator may go out there. They may see that nothing's wrong. The child seems well cared for. Maybe it was a bogus report, right? So if that's the case, then chances are a lot of times DCF will go ahead and close the case at that point. The other option is that maybe the investigator goes in, they do see that there's cause for concern, but the child remains in the home. So if that happens, sometimes the child may remain in the home with certain services put in place. So that may be something along the lines of DCF monitoring, family prayers, mental health services, and that kind of thing. The second thing is that a child may be placed in a relative care. So maybe we have a grandmother or an aunt or somebody that is willing to take placement of that child. If there is not a relative available, then that child will be placed in what we call non-related kin. So that may be like a neighbor or a best friend's mom or a coach or somebody like that. And then the last thing is if none of those options are available or they're not found to be appropriate, the child will be put in what we call a form of foster care placement. Oh, okay, so we're going to do an activity. I kind of went a little ahead of myself here. So we're going to be kind of looking at some of the common acronyms used in child welfare, just to kind of see what you all know. One of the first ones that I have here, and you can go ahead and type it in the chat if you think you know what some of these abbreviations stand for. But a lot of times I think that we get hung up a lot on, okay, what are they talking about, right? So we're going to kind of try to decode some of this for you guys. So PIT, EHS, and HFA, what are we thinking for those? Parents and teachers, early head start, and healthy families. Absolutely. So it's really important that we kind of keep in mind that just because, just like, we may not know what they're talking about, they may not know what some of our acronyms mean in either, right? So we have to keep that in mind, whether we're working with other professionals, whether we're working with child welfare, whether we're working with our families. Not everybody knows what our acronyms stand for. Okay, what about DCF? What are we thinking there? Department for Children and Families, absolutely. So this is going to be, well, I'm not sure what's happening here. Okay, there we go. So this is the state agency for foster care and adoption in Kansas. One thing to keep in mind is that Kansas foster care is privatized. So a lot of times you may not be working directly with DCF if the child has already been removed. You may be dealing with what we call a subcontractor, in which case you may be working with somebody called DECA or KBC or TFI, one of those places. So that's important to keep in mind. Okay, what about CM or CW? Case manager, case worker. So a lot of people already know what this is all about here. Okay, so absolutely, that's what that means. So this is the person that you want to be in ongoing contact with, as they will be overseeing that family case. What about GAL? Guardian ad litem. Definitely. So the guardian ad litem, whoops, I went ahead of myself, but that's okay. So the guardian ad litem is the lawyer arguing for the best interest of the child. So normally this is somebody who has been appointed by the court. And a lot of times the guardian ad litem is going to have some kind of a legal background. So the reason for that is because we need to have somebody who kind of knows the legality behind what is going on, and fighting for the best interest of that child. The CASA, obviously, is the court-appointed special advocate. So there is a difference between the two. And a lot of people ask me what that difference is. So a lot of times the GAL is going to be a paid position. And a lot of times the GAL is going to, again, have some kind of a legal background where CASA may not necessarily have that. The other reason why you may have a GAL and not a CASA worker, or you may have a CASA worker but a lot of times you're going to have a GAO regardless. So sometimes, depending on the area that you're from, a CASA worker will be put in place because the GAO just does not have enough time to really meet with that child. So they put a CASA worker in place. And so, like in Wyandotte County, especially where I'm from, we put CASA workers in there constantly just so that they could really develop a better relationship with that child, because so many GAOs had 50 to 60 kids on their caseload. So it's really hard to develop a relationship and really be able to fight for the best interest of that child if you don't know what's going on. Okay. All right, ICWA, what are we thinking? Indian Child Welfare Act, definitely. So the Indian Child Welfare Act, is a federal law dictating how child welfare deals with Native American children. So for those of you who may be working on a tribal reservation or with tribal families, this is something that you probably have come across, or at least know a little something about. Maybe you have heard of it before. Anytime that a Native American child comes down the pike into child welfare is required by federal law to contact that tribe to determine what kind of jurisdiction and what kind of involvement that tribe would want. So it's really important, if you have a Native American child that you are dealing with that may be in this situation, to make sure that that foster care agency is following ICWA laws. What about Icpc? Interstate Compact on Placement of Children. Some of you guys are just rolling with this. This is awesome. Okay, so Interstate Compact on Placement of Children. So the reason why I bring that up is because, again, if you live in a border town, like I do, I live in Kansas City, so a lot of times we had to enter into an Icpc with Missouri. And that often happens in a situation such as, let's say that we've got a grandma that lives in KCMO, kids will really thrive there. They have a really close relationship with grandma, but here's the problem. DCF cannot go into Missouri, Missouri cannot come into Kansas. So we really got hung up about, okay, we got to enter into this Icpc agreement in order to make sure that this kid can be placed over there. And we can keep eyes on that kid, make sure that they're getting what they need out of that placement. TPR, last one. Termination of parental rights. So this is pretty significant. It's not anybody's favorite thing, but unfortunately, in some cases, we do have to permanently sever those rights because it's just not healthy for that child to be in that home with that parent. Okay, so when is a family done, right? So we hear this a lot. Families will probably ask you, or they'll ask the caseworker or somebody like that because they are under a microscope and they are so done with that, right? And it's a fair question. It really is. They are being scrutinized, and every move that they make, it just seems like, oh my God, are we ever going to get done with this? So here's when a lot of times when the cases are closed. So again, going back to the hotline call, or if an investigator goes out and they find that there is no evidence to really prove one way or the other that something has happened, the child will be returned home, and the case will be closed. The second thing that may happen is, let's say that DCF comes in, they say, yes, there is a concern, we're going to put services in place, and then the parent fulfills those requirements to the best of DCF satisfaction and the court satisfaction, then they will normally close the case at that point. The third thing is they go back home. So this is when a child has been removed from the home. The parent goes through and they fulfill all court requirements. And then what they do is they have a period of what we call aftercare. And aftercare, depending on where you live, can be from 6 months to up to a year after the kids are returned home. So there will constantly be somebody in that home, a worker from either DCF or KVC, DECA, whatever the subcontractor is that they're working with, going into that home just to make sure that those kids aren't having to be pulled out again. And then the last one would be parental right termination. So this is when parent rights are severed permanently, at which point the child's case will often turn to adoption, and we will be trying to find an adoptive placement for them. Or they obtain what we call guardianship. So guardianship is a lot different from adoption in the sense that it's still a permanent option, but there are not as many, forgive me for saying this, not as many hoops for them to jump through. So a lot of times we do guardianship with older kids, teenagers that, you know, don't have a whole lot of time left in the system. Or if that is not an option, then they will age out. They do get independent living services that follow them until they're 21. I'm not, okay, so this is talking about court. I'm not going to go through all of these hearings. I'm just going to talk about the two bigger major ones that I think that you guys need to know about. The first of which is adjudication. So adjudication is when, let's say that DCF has proven the case, they have said, yes, okay, there is a need for, or I'm sorry, let me go back. Adjudication basically means that they are in the process of trying to prove that abuse is happening. In which case, if you were already in the home, maybe you made the hotline report, maybe somebody else did, but you have already been in the home, you may be called to that hearing just to kind of attest to what did you see, to kind of help us determine whether or not this is an abuse and neglect case. The second hearing that you'll probably be subpoenaed for is what we call the termination of parental rights hearing. A lot of my folks and even myself have been subpoenaed for that type of hearing. So a lot of times by that point, we have been working with the family for a while. Maybe they've been having some visitation that we've been involved with. And so a lot of times the court will want to know, okay, what's been your involvement with this family and what have you seen? So let's talk about that for a little bit. Let's talk about testifying in court. It looks like we've got some things. Okay, so somebody was asking me when did they age out? So yes, the age of 18 is the age that they age out. A lot of times they will continue to receive independent living services, like I said, clear up until they're 21. So independent living basically follows those kids and making sure that they have a steady job, they have a steady place to live. Right prior, before I left child welfare, they also put in place making sure that that child had a community person, whether it be a foster parent or whether it be a teacher or somebody that that child felt connected to, that would provide that child with mentorship and also a home if they needed it, so a place that they could go to for the holidays and that kind of thing. Okay, so talking about testifying, if you are called to testify, so you will be issued a subpoena. You're not required to show up to court until you are issued that. Okay, and that would be normally coming to you from the court or from an attorney asking you to please show up to court at such and such a time on such and such a day. Once you get that subpoena, it's highly recommended that you talk with your supervisor about, okay, I've got this. What is our policy? Do we have a policy? If we don't have a policy, you might want to get one in place. So, you know, it's an attorney that you need to speak with before you get to the point where you're showing up for court to let you know what you're supposed to say. I know that in our district, the number of times that I've gotten a subpoena, we've had a district attorney show up to court with us just to kind of make sure that we're protected and making sure that, you know, we say the right things. The third thing about testifying, document, and this comes straight from a family judge that I used to work with way back in the day when I worked in child welfare. Make sure you have your documentation together. Now, that does not mean walking into court with your full case file, because here's the thing, you walk in with your full case file, anybody in that courtroom can grab it, okay, and start looking through it and start building their case off of what you brought in. So that being said, my recommendation is always make a one-pager of important dates. So that would be the dates that you had your visits, the dates that maybe they canceled on you, the dates that they no-showed, any reports that you made for the family, any screenings you did, you know, and then obviously talking about, okay, what kind of interaction have you seen with that family and that child? What does the engagement between parent and child look like? Definitely stick to the facts. So you're not there to give an opinion. You're not there to give a recommendation. I don't know how many times some crafty attorneys have asked me, well, what is your recommendation on parental right termination? And I'm like, I can't give you one. That's not my role. That's not within the scope of what I am here to do. So definitely stick to the fact of what you see, you heard, and you did. Okay. And speaking along the same lines about that documentation, yes, I believe that it is very, very important that we be strength-based. We are strength-based programs. However, we don't want to sugarcoat anything, right? If there's something going on that you are concerned about, if there's something that you saw in a visit and you're like, okay, that was odd, right? Put it in your notes. Definitely put it in your notes, because here's the thing: if you guys get caught in the court and you have all these wonderful sugar-coated things in your notes, and they subpoena those records because they can, and you don't have anything in there about, well, you know, I was really concerned and this is why I made this hotline report, that may come back to bite you. Okay, well, why did you make a hotline report if you don't have any concerns written in your notes, right? So just make sure that you're kind of keeping that in the back of your mind. I'm not saying you have to, you know, just completely dish a family or anything like that, but you do want to be honest about what you see going on. Okay, so just a quick question, and you guys can go ahead and put this in the chat too, but what if you have had any visits with families that have been involved with DCF, what do those look like for you? What kind of is the environment that you're going into when you do these types of visits? So one of the things that I do want to point out, so these are just some different pictures that I've kind of put on here. So in some cases, oh, we got some people in the chat here. Families are angry, some chaos within the home, they're guarded. Depends on whether DCF was involved before as the actor. Absolutely, thank you for touching on that. I only visit white future families, most of them are nervous. More about engagement than focusing on chaos. Absolutely, Lindsay. Thank you for bringing that up. Defensive parents overall. Right, so you're gonna get a mouthful, right? From some of these parents when you first walk in, they're gonna have a mouthful to talk to you about the caseworker, about the system, about how much they're being picked on. All of that is going to happen, right? So, and in some cases, you know, you may actually be seeing the family either in the home, so kind of like this picture over here, you know, I mean, you might be seeing them at an agency, kind of like this mama over here with her child. So that frustration now, you know, is very, very normal in working with these families. You know, they are under that microscope. So that's one of the things that you're going to see when you're working with them. And they may have that distrust, right? Like, are you coming in to tell me that you're going to take my kids away? Are you here to kind of spy on what's going on? Okay. So we're going to kind of talk about ways to kind of get around that a little bit. Okay, so somebody said it can be stressful because the guards are up, lots of redirection because they usually ask lots of questions not related to the visit, right? Self-advocate and softening the reasons for the child separation and so on. Absolutely. So these are all things that kind of are different, right? We don't normally see some of that when we're working with some of the other families that we work with. So that makes these types of families very unique in the sense that, you know, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of distrust of the system. And then you're coming in and then you already have this ball of stuff that has been handed to you, right? Okay, deal with it, right? Make something happen. So a lot of times we start to feel frustrated, right? Because we already have this hostile or frustrated family, and then we get them. So what can we do with that? Okay. Two things to remember about visits with families involved in this type of situation. One, if they're still involved in foster care, so the children have been removed from the home, you definitely want to make sure that you have contact with the caseworker on that case, because any and all visits are going to be at the discretion of that worker. So maybe it is at the office of the agency, in which case it's supervised. And if the visits are supervised. I cannot stress this enough because I've been in this situation before. It is not our job to supervise visits. We are not DCF workers. We are not case workers. So if you find out that these visits are to be supervised, you better ask if somebody else can be supervising those visits. Okay, that is not within the scope of what we do. That is not our responsibility. Okay, so how can you support these families, right? So the first and foremost thing is acknowledging that overwhelming feeling that these families are gonna have. Okay, that frustration that they're going to have. Validate that. Okay, when you walk in there and they're like, great, one more person to tell me how awful I am, right? Don't be that person. Okay, validate. Tell them, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm here. Oh, look at you sitting on the floor playing with your child today. Oh my God, look at how she's smiling at you. Oh, you have so many toys here in the room for her. That's wonderful. Can you show me what you like to do with her? All of a sudden, you have shifted the trajectory of what that visit is going to look like. And you have already started to shift that thinking toward, okay, there's a professional coming into my home and she's telling me that I'm doing good things, right? Because all too often they have heard 5, 10, 15 people telling them how awful they are and why their kids have been taken away and what they need to do to get them back. We can be the people going in there to show them a whole different side of things when it comes to working with professionals. The other thing to kind of keep in mind too is to think of you as one of many service providers. So again, thinking of yourself as, yes, I'm another professional coming into this home, but I want to be strength-based, right? Because that's what we should be focused on. Okay, so how many of you have ever seen or heard of Maslow's hierarchy? All right. Well, we're going to go through this real fast. So Maslow's hierarchy basically states that there are varying levels of need, starting with the basic need, which is a need for food, water, rest, warmth, all of that. So the bottom level basically focuses more on our comfort. What are the things that we need in our lives to make sure that we're comfortable? And above that is our need for safety. So we cannot be concerned with our safety until our basic needs are met first. Okay, so our need for shelter, our need for food, all of those things have to be met first before we can even worry about our safety. From there, it goes into a sense of belonging. Do I belong to something, right? So a lot of times, when we are working with these types of families, we may find that they are in a different situation, right? So maybe they are at the bottom. You walk in and mom is concerned about the fact that she has lost her job and rent is due tomorrow, right? Is anything on your plan going to be worth talking about if you plan to talk about little Johnny's bedtime schedule? No, right? Because mom's not there. She's worrying about how she's going to survive today. Right? She's worrying about how she's going to keep a roof over her head. Nothing about what you have brought to the table is going to matter if mom is in that situation. Okay. And then from belonging, we're going to esteem needs, so kind of that feeling of accomplishment. I can do this. And then lastly is who am I? So kind of answering the question of this is who I am, this is part of my identity, this is what I know I can do, as the person that I am. Okay, so we're going to do a real quick activity. I know we're starting to run short on time, so I'm going to try to get through this as fast as we can. So where do these families fall on Maslow's hierarchy? And again, you can put it in the chat. So upon arriving at a visit, you are met at the front door by mom, who is very distraught. After calming her down, you find out that the family's lights have just been shut off and she is afraid of CPS finding out. So where might she be on this? Basic needs, absolutely. So she's down in the bottom. What about safety? Does anybody think that she might be feeling a little unsafe, especially given the fact that she just lost her job? So when we think of safety, a lot of times we may be thinking about financial and also job security. So again, it's really important that we kind of consider that as well. But the basic needs, most definitely, she's worried about that. Okay, the next one, during a home visit, mom excitedly informs you she received a promotion and raise at work. So where might she fall? So the top, the esteem needs, absolutely. She feels like she can do this. She's got a sense of accomplishment, so like self-fulfillment, and self-actualization, right? Like she's coming into who she is as a professional person, kind of figuring out what that means for her now that she got this promotion. Alrighty. So why did I talk to you about that? So it's really important that we kind of meet families where they are. So again, kind of going back to my example of if you go into the house, mom is already stressing about how she's going to pay for rent tomorrow, and you're there to talk about discipline, or you're there to talk about nutrition. She's not there. Okay. So sometimes, unfortunately, in those types of situations, it's not to our benefit to really focus on our plan at that point in time, right? We got to calm things down. We got to focus on where mom's at. So a lot of times I get this, okay, well, Shelly, what do you do if a family constantly in crisis, right? It's crisis after crisis. You know, you go in one week and it's the rent, and then you go in the next week and the lights have been shut off, and it's always something with these families. Well, if that's the case, then what I always tell folks is, and I tell my families the same thing. I say, hey, you know what? I understand you got a lot going on, but you know what? This is your visit with your child. So let's focus for a little bit of time on that engagement piece of you sitting on the floor playing with your child, and then I'll give you some time and we can talk about this other stuff. So this is just kind of talking about that engagement. So again, validation, validating what they're doing well. You may be the only person that's bringing into that home that's doing that. Okay, talk up their strength, talk up that interaction with their child. Keep in mind that some of these families may only get 1 hour a week with that child. Okay, so make that a big deal. Make sure that you bring in whatever activity you feel like those parents are going to get a kick out of. Okay, and make sure that you make that interaction the biggest part, because they're already concerned about the relationship with the child. That child is not with them. Okay, and it can affect attachment. So what do we know about attachment? That if we can get those parents on the floor, engage with those children, interacting in the way that we can get them to interact with those kids, we can help to foster some of that attachment with them. Remind them how far they've come. So a lot of times they go to court, and how many of us have heard this? They go to court and then they come back and they're just devastated because now the court has added 5 more things that are already full plate. In which case I tell the parents, I'm like, and what 5 things have you already completed? Because I know you've completed something, right? So this is just another bump in the road. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together. I'm here to help you, and we're going to get this going. Definitely listen to them. So that goes back to the frustration. So the first couple of visits, you're probably going to hear a lot of complaining. Okay, a lot of whining about the DCF worker, about the system, about the situation that they're in. It's not fair. I can't believe that people are picking on me, right? We got to get past that. So the only way you're going to get past that is by listening to what they have to say. And it may take a good 15, 20 minutes of your visit time, but let's get past that, right? And say, okay, well, yeah, this really stinks. This really, really stinks. But here, I'm here to help you and to help your child, right? And if you getting your kids home is what you want, like you say is what you want, then what can we do to start making that happen? What's the process that we need to go through? You're also not there to fix it for them. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. You're also not there to fix it for them. This is something that I really struggle with sometimes, with wanting to go in and kind of fix all the problems for them, right? But it's really important that we remember that we're not there to do that either, okay? So how can we implement our curriculum? So a lot of times, if we only have a family and they're only getting 1 hour a week with their kids, how can we talk about nutrition if those kids are at home? How can we talk about bedtime routines and all this other stuff? So one of the things that I say is that ask them those what if questions. If your child was home right now, what kind of bedtime would you think would be appropriate? You know, definitely talking about attachment. So making sure that that attachment is engaged with those 2 parent and child on the floor together. Don't focus too much on the family well-being piece. That can overwhelm them and it can overwhelm you. Okay, so a lot of times what I say is let's focus on that for the last maybe 10 minutes of our visit, because if we focus on that, it's going to take up the next 2 hours, right? Goal setting. So a lot of times when I ask the parent what goals they have, they bring out their court orders. Well, this is what they told me I'm supposed to work on, right? Yeah, that's a lot because you've got 2 pages of court orders there. We're not going to get through all that. So let's pick one and then let's break it down. Oh, okay, gee, you need to have a mental health assessment. So what's the first thing we need to do? Well, I need to call and make an appointment. Okay, let's do that. We can even do that together while I'm sitting here with you, right? So break that down even further, nitty gritty baby steps. All right, so let's talk about collaboration with other professionals. The reason why I think this is so important is because it takes a load off your plate. Okay, so collateral might be a word that you would hear when it comes to collaboration with other professionals. And it may be those people that you would be collaborating with. So in thinking about collaboration, maybe some of the people that you already deal with now, what are some collaborations that you already have within your community? And you can put it in the chat or you can shout it out, either one. Okay, United Way. So United Way is a resource that apparently some Irene, you have used in the past. So that's awesome. Any other collaborations that you all can think of? Okay, my family health department, schools, libraries, Salvation Army for helps, Birthright, okay, infant and toddler services, WIC, family pregnancy center, okay. So the health department, early education, absolutely. So you've got a lot of collaborations that a lot of you within the community that you live in are probably already working with. Now within DCF, you know, you definitely want to make sure that you're in collaboration with those caseworkers because those are going to be your first point of contact in what's going on with that family, what's going on with the children, and what's going on with their cases. If you work with a foster home worker might be somebody that you may need to be in contact with. Any court officials, so that's just in case maybe a court official contacts you. I don't make a point of going out of my way to contact them. I normally wait until I know for sure whether or not that's somebody I need to be in contact with. I do know that within our program, infant toddler, I'm glad that some of you brought that up. They can be an amazing resource. As a matter of fact, we had 2 wonderful ladies just talking about that earlier in a former workshop that I was in, and how that collaboration can really help us as home visitors, parent educators, to be able to better serve our families. And here's the thing too about collaboration, because I have had a couple of people speak to this. Collaboration does not mean that I want you to become a social worker. It does not mean that I want you to become somebody outside of the scope of what you are. Collaboration is more helping you, okay? It's not going outside of the scope of what you're supposed to do, but rather it's helping to remove some of that stuff from your plate. Because if you're going into a home and that mom is dealing with some serious mental health issues, how awesome would it be if you had a therapist in your corner that you could call and be like, okay, you need to talk to this person. You need to talk to this mom. I mean, I don't know what's going on, but it's more than what I can deal with right now, right? And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have that collaboration. So again, collaboration is key, just kind of touching back on what I just said. It can help you to feel like you're not doing it alone. Keeping in contact with professionals can help you know what's going on with that case. And last but not least, definitely take care of yourselves, you guys. DCF involved families are very challenging. So definitely mind your boundaries. Make sure that you are turning your phone off. For some of these families, they do not have a sense of timing. They do not realize that texting you at 2 a.m. in the morning is rude. So they will do that. So definitely make sure that you are establishing those boundaries, letting your families know when you might contact them again. I'm not going to contact you at 12 o'clock at night, but I'll contact you the next morning. Definitely making sure that you are utilizing your regular reflective supervision with your supervisors or colleague. So if you have any issues that come up with these types of families, definitely making sure that you have somebody that you can speak with. And again, collaborating with other service professionals, making sure that you're not going outside of the scope of what you are supposed to do. So we are not therapists, we are not domestic violence advocates, we are not substance abuse counselors. First and foremost, we are home visitors. That's what we're here to do, right? We are there to provide those activities and that information for these families, and that's where it should stop. So that is all that I have for today. This is my information. So if you guys want to write it down, if you have any questions that maybe I was not able to answer during this presentation, you can definitely email me or call me. I'll be more than happy to talk with you. It looks like we may have. Does anybody have any questions before we end? Oh, it looks like there was a question about why was there 1 hour dedicated to visitation. Honestly, I don't know the reason for that 1 hour. Like I said, I mean, a lot of times now it kind of depends on where the child is placed. So I know that a lot of foster care agencies are trying to increase the amount of time. I also think that for that 1 hour period of time, it depends on if it's supervised. If it's supervised, 1 hour is normally the going rate, just because they understand that caseworkers have a lot of other things on their plate. So 1 hour seemed to be, how do I want to say, the compromisable amount of time that they would need a caseworker to sit there and supervise that visit. So I would anticipate that's probably why. But as parents and children start to get more into the unsupervised time, you might see them starting to have either a half a day or maybe even an overnight. A lot of times with visits, it goes from 1 hour to several hours to overnight to a weekend before they do what we call a prior home placement, which normally lasts for about 2 weeks before that child is placed at home. Any other questions? Okay, well, if there's nothing else, Michelle, I don't know that I see any other questions. Do you?
No, I didn't see any in there either.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me today. I hope that you found it informative. And if there is anything else, definitely reach out to me by email. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Shelly.
Thank you.